Pharmacy and the whole crew of UC that have made this amazing event happen. Thank you for having us here. So, as you probably saw some of the silk portraits that were hanging outside, those portraits are part of the Grace Project. I have photographed over 250 women who have been affected by breast cancer so far, and the goal is to photograph 800 women, which is the approximate number of women diagnosed with new diagnoses every day in the United States. And eventually I want to exhibit all 800 silks in one space at one time, and then you can really, it'll be a very impactful thing for women to, or for anyone to walk in and see, this is breast cancer in one day in America. I'm going to tell you how I came to the project. I am not a breast cancer survivor, and nor did I really know anybody who was close to me that was, but I was for many years a boudoir photographer, and I photographed women of all different ages and sizes and shapes, and they would come to my studio and they'd have these amazing transformative experiences. And a local newspaper found out about my work, and they put an article about me, and they interviewed a lot of the women that had been my clients, and they told about how they had had these healing experiences, that they felt better about their bodies, that they cried when they saw how beautiful they were. And I got a call from a man, and he called me after that article, and he said, I want to book a shoot for my wife, but she doesn't know that I want her to do this yet. And I said, okay. He said, but I wanted to check on the prices before I offered it to her. And I said, okay. So he called me back and booked a shoot for his wife. And this beautiful, vivacious, 62-year-old woman shows up at my studio. And she has her arms loaded with like hat boxes and scarves and jackets and all kinds of beautiful feminine stuff, but it's all in an attempt to stay covered. Which was fine, because a boudoir shot is not necessarily about being naked or being in lingerie, but it's about a sensual portrait of yourself. So I wanted to let her just do what was right for her. So we're shooting, and she's like, you know, in my studio, and I can just see she's feeling sexy and beautiful and goddess-like, and all of a sudden she stops in the middle of our shoot, and she says, I have a confession to make. And I said, sure, what is that? She said, well, I'm a 12-year breast cancer survivor, and my surgery went wrong, and I have all kinds of scarring, and I feel mutilated underneath, you know, on my breast where I had the mastectomy, and my husband thinks I'm beautiful, and I don't think that I am, but he read the article about you, and he wanted me to feel beautiful the way the women in the article had felt. And I was completely touched by her telling me this, and I said, you know, thank you for sharing. What a beautiful gesture your husband has made. So I continued photographing her, and now that she'd made this confession, she felt more comfortable to start exposing her non-mastectomy breast, but leaving her mastectomy breast covered. And so I'm photographing her, and she starts feeling comfortable again, and she's like laying on my Victorian couch, and in this odalisque sort of position, and she's wearing in the moment like a shirt, and she has, you know, one sleeve on but the other one off, and I'm clicking and clicking away, and all of a sudden she just throws off her shirt and she goes, fuck it, I'm doing this for myself. And it was really just such a beautiful moment, because in that one moment, I saw a woman let go of 12 years of shame from her body. She'd never let anyone see her body other than her husband and her doctors. And it was really a metamorphosis, and it was such a beautiful, powerful, cathartic moment for both of us. And I really felt like, you know, this idea needed to be looked at and explored more. I mean, it was just one of the most powerful photographic moments I've ever had, and that's actually the woman who, that's one of her portraits. You can see that's after she had taken off her clothes, and she was very comfortable there. So then I had another friend who called me 2 weeks after that, and she said, I can't afford to do a boudoir shoot, but I really need somebody to photograph my body because I'm about to have my breast chopped off in 3 days. And she showed up to my studio, and this was the portrait that we took. And it was a really emotional moment because I watched everything that she went through, her fear, her bravery. And then she came back to me 3 weeks, she came back to me after her surgery, and we re-photographed her body. So between those two experiences, I really felt like my heart was calling me to do this project. So when I photograph people, when I try to conceptualize the project, like how do you make someone who feels broken feel beautiful? How do you make broken beautiful? How do you make scars beautiful? How do you make someone who just feels broken on the inside feel beautiful? And I really love the concept of kintsugi, which is an ancient Japanese art form, where when a bowl got broken, rather than casting it away and throwing it away, they would instead adorn it with gold. They would put gold in the cracks, and they would put it back together, and the bowl would be even more beautiful than it was before it was broken, and it would be more treasured because it had survived something. And then I started thinking about the Venus de Milo, and how the Venus de Milo has survived the trauma of history, and in the process of that, she's lost her arms, her limbs, and yet we still consider her one of the most important cultural icons of beauty that exist in the world today. So I kind of, when I'm photographing people, I sort of give them this concept. It helps them to sort of conceptualize brokenness as beauty, because the brokenness represents the delicacy of life. It represents beauty. It represents survival. And it also helps people when they're viewing the image kind of see something, look at something that can be difficult to look at, but there's this sort of classicalness to it, and it makes it a little bit more easy for people to sort of view the images, because one of the things I notice is that a lot of the images that are out there in the world of women who've had breast cancer are very clinical and cold. They often have their heads chopped off, and it's hard for people to look at and a little scary for people sometimes. So I was invited to a retreat at Omega Institute in New York to present the Grace Project to a group of women who were metastatic, and present the work to them, and they were all given the opportunity to be photographed. And 6 women volunteered that day, and 5 of them wanted to be photographed together on the lawn. And this one woman, Louise, wanted to be photographed by herself after lunch at the sanctuary. And I said to her, that's fine, Louise, we can do whatever you want. And Louise was in pretty rough shape. She had to use a walker. She'd had her hip replacement. And so we had lunch, and all the women were kind of calling me over to their table, but there was one woman in particular. Her name was Carla, and I just felt like she needed me to sit next to her, and she wanted to talk to me. So I sat down next to Carla, and Carla says to me, she goes, I did a boudoir shoot once. And I said, yeah. And she goes, yeah. She said, my husband and I were really happily married, and we have this child, and he has genetic problems, but we were really in love, and and our life was hard, but we would get through every day together, and it was just, she goes, I felt like I was really blessed. And so for one of our anniversaries, I decided to do a boudoir portrait for him. And she said, I went and had, I searched out the photographer, and I went and had the shoot done. And she said, she said, but like, before I even got the photographs back, she said, I got my diagnosis for breast cancer. And at that point, she just started sobbing, like full shoulder sobbing at the table. And she said, I felt like, she said, I couldn't even look at my boudoir photographs because I felt like they were a black cloud. They represented the black cloud that had just come into my life and destroyed all my happiness. And So she just cried and she cried, and I said to her, Carla, you're such a beautiful woman, and I know you've been doing spiritual work at this retreat. I said, how about you come to my studio and we'll spend time together, we'll drink wine, we'll do makeup, we'll have girly time, I'll do some new pictures of you, and they can represent the new way that you're going to step into your life from here. They can be the new beautiful ways that you look at your life. And so she took my card, and I could see her thinking about it. Now Louise now comes along because lunchtime ends, and she's like, all right, I'm ready to be photographed, and I've picked out my piece of fabric I want to use, and I have the golf cart ready to take us up to the sanctuary because she really couldn't walk. And Carla looked at me and she said, can I come and watch? And I said to her, wow, you better ask Louise, because Louise was really in control here. And so Louise said, yes, of course you can come and watch. So we go up to the sanctuary, which is this beautiful area with like there's a little pond, and there's rocks, and there's trees, and it's in the woods, and the sun was glinting through the trees, and there were dragonflies and birds chirping, and it was really the most beautiful September day. And we had to undress Louise and carry her up onto the rocks and place her, and we wrapped this piece of cloth around her shoulder, and she immediately transformed from this lady who could barely walk and who just seemed so small and delicate and ill to this beautiful goddess, this ancient Buddhist goddess who had all this power on top of it, And I'm shooting her and just seeing this absolute beauty in front of my eyes. And Carla's sitting there watching it too, and seeing the transformation happen as I'm shooting her. And so I finished Louise's shoot, and I knew I got really good material, and I said to her, Louise, thank you so much, that was wonderful. And Carla looks at me and she says, if I took my top off but left my jeans on, she said, would that be enough for the purposes of your project? And I said, yeah, absolutely. She said, because I'd really like to be photographed by you. So I took the same piece of silk that Louise was wearing, and I wrapped them around Carla's jeans and sat her up on the rock, and this amazing, transformation happened. So she also became sort of this empowered, beautiful, powerful goddess. So a few weeks after I'd done the shoot, Carla messages me on Facebook, and a little chat pops up, and she wanted to know when she was going to get her pictures, and I said, oh, there's a little bit of a process. I have to kind of really, process the images and see which one really speaks, but you're going to get them soon. And she said, oh, good. I'm just really curious to see them. And I said, how are you doing? And she said, I'm hanging in there. I'm trying to take one day at a time. I started drug trial at Sloan on Thursday, and I'm mustering up all the positive energy that I have for it to stabilize me. Love, Carla. And I wrote back and I said, well, I'm going to email you something very special to your email in a few minutes that will remind you of how very powerful, beautiful, magical you are. Because I had this, little voice in my head that said, Carla needs to see her pictures now. She needs to feel empowered. So I sent them to her via email, and I said, so these are incredibly beautiful and magical and a real testament to the spirit that was there that day at Omega. I really love these images. I hope you can recognize the goddess and the strength that lives within the amazing woman in these photographs. And she wrote back immediately, and she said, oh wow, I'm speechless in the best possible way. What a gift you have, and what a gift you've given me. Gratitude abounding, Carla. So I knew that the little voice that I'd heard in my head that she needed to see those images was the right voice, and that I had sent them to her based on her response. So a couple of weeks later, I am in my car, stopped at a traffic light, and I know you're not supposed to do this, but I did. I switched on Facebook, and I looked, and the first image that popped up was the face of Carla, and somebody had tagged her, and it had said, my beautiful friend is no longer with us here on this planet. And Carla had passed away, and I knew in that moment that really listening to that voice and getting her pictures had been really important. And the thing that was really beautiful is that I had been able to get Carla's photographs. I printed photographs and I got them to her husband. And I wrote a letter because I didn't even know if he knew that she had done the shoot. And I wrote him a letter explaining what had happened, what we had done with the pictures. And he wrote me back the most beautiful letter that said, for the first time since Carla's diagnosis, Carla came to terms with what cancer had done with her body. So this project has all these really incredible stories like this that just keep happening over and over and over again with women. And I get letters from women all over the world that they write to me and they say, I felt so alone until I saw these images. Thank you for doing this. And that's one of Carla's pictures. And I just think it's so beautiful because all these sort of orbs and magical rainbows appeared in the image, and it's just such a beautiful image of her spirit. This is a mother and daughter who had a very healing experience being photographed together. These are 3 sisters who were diagnosed within 6 months of each other. This is Tammy. She was a local person. Some of you might be familiar with her. She passed away last year. And this is Talika. The girl on the left without the reconstruction is Talika. Actually, we had a really sweet, touching moment. Talika passed away last year, two years ago. And I photographed this at Talika's mom's house. Talika's mom and family came to this event today and were moved to tears when they saw her picture hanging out in the foyer. It was a very emotional moment. Sarah is another one of our women that passed away. She fought so hard. She had 5 children that she left behind. And this is Robin. Robin had leukemia when she was 12 years old and was given really, really high doses of radiation, and it caused her spine to curl over. So when she stands up, her spine is constantly curved like that. She's very small. She never really grew properly, but she told me that circles were really important to her. And at the end of her shoot, I lay a piece of fabric in a circle on the floor, and this was the final picture that we did. This is Melanie. She always complains. When she saw her picture, she told Jules that she was uncomfortable about it. She thought her feet looked funny. And Jules told her, nobody's looking at your feet, Melanie. I love the way that people come to terms with what's happened to them. Like this girl, she said to me when I shot this, she said, I love my breasts. I love my reconstruction. She said, I have the perfect American girl body. I have Barbie breasts, plastic breasts with no nipples. This is my friend Carol, who also passed away. She had metastatic disease, and I just think this is such a great picture of what it's like to have metastatic breast cancer, just the trees and the fall and the autumn. Another local girl with her 2 children who are actually very naughty. We had to bribe them with candy. Two sisters who are also from here in Cincinnati. And that's the last one, and that was shot on the Capitol lawn in Washington, D.C. in front of the Capitol building. So anyway, thank you very much.